Videos are back. We took a little bit of a hiatus there. The Italiano is still on vacation, but today I got Mr. Seymour Duck with me. We're talking all about theme park attendance for 2023. We're also going to talk about Disney's stock and the overall health of the Walt Disney Company. There's a lot of narratives out there that this company is a sinking ship, and that isn't necessarily the case. We're going to kind of break down those numbers. We're also going to talk about the succession plan. There was some news in regards to that. Who is going to replace Mr. Bob Iger? We're going to talk all about that up next on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. I got Seymour Duck with me today. We're breaking down those 2023 theme park attendance numbers. We're also talking about Disney stock, the health of the Walt Disney Company, Bob Iger successor. We have a lot to discuss today. Mr. Seymour Duck, welcome back on the channel, sir.
Hello. Glad to be back and glad to nerd out with you guys. With you this time. Sorry, yeah. George is not here.
He is not. When George vacations, he vacations, and he actually extended out his vacation by a few more days. But he will be returning very, very soon. But Mr. Seymour Duck, if you could let everybody home know where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There he is. Make sure you follow this man on X. He does a lot of great financial analysis, not just for Disney, but also for Nintendo. He's a big fan of Nintendo, Japanese companies in general. But Mr. Seymour Duck breaks it down. Brilliant guy.
I have some bad news though.
What's that?
I'm getting that special access. I bought into Disney shares again.
Oh, you got the special access?
Yeah, next week I'm going to Bob Iger's yacht to get the unlimited Dole Whip.
Oh, nice. That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Say hi to Dana Walden for me while you're down there too, you know? Yes. Absolutely. Seymour Duck, it is always a pleasure having you on, sir. Let's break down these numbers. This is from Mr. Scott Gooston. And we met Scott at the D23 fan event a couple weeks ago, and he is a great guy. Really, really good guy. Really fun conversations we had with him about the parks, just kind of nerding out. So big shout out to Scott. But he says here, the 2023 edition of TEA and ICOM's Global Attraction Attendance Report was released today, and it includes the top 20 theme parks in North America. We got Magic Kingdom #1, Disneyland out here in California #2, Epcot, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and rounding up the top 5 is Universal Islands of Adventure. Now, this is very interesting, okay? We're going to kind of break these numbers down, but look, we're in this space. We're heavily in this community, Seymour and I, and you go on X and you look, X, YouTube, name your social media platform. And the narrative was, hey, look, you know what? Disney's got this brand problem, this brand pullback, you know, and everyone's abandoning Disney and they're going over to Universal. Universal's where it's at. Universal's the hot new thing, you know. Then the numbers come out and it kind of paints a different picture, Seymour. It's kind of interesting here. You know, we have, Magic Kingdom #1, 3.4% increase. We got Disneyland, 2.2% increase, neck and neck now with Magic Kingdom. Epcot saw a 19% gain. Now, Hollywood Studios did take a 5% dip, and Islands of Adventure went down 9%. Here's a weird one, though. California Adventure went up 11.1%, which is very, very strange because we have DCA, as we call it, we haven't had anything really new at that park. For it to go up 11% is kind of weird. But overall, before we dive in, Seymour, what are your overall thoughts on what you're kind of seeing here, brother?
Where's the brand damage?
I can't find it. Find it.
I do want to emphasize these are 2023 numbers. I saw a lot of people mistaking these for current numbers for 2024, but they're not. They're 2023, meaning they were last year's number. And I remember reports on CNBC saying that Disney parks were empty, they were dead. There was a whole article about it. And then even a scathing article how maybe it was a mistake in bringing back Bob Iger. Maybe they should have kept Bob Chapek. Like I saw all of these like negative news about Disney, and I'm like, huh? I go to YouTube, I see the live streams. They're not empty. I mean, like you could just go on YouTube. There's vloggers out there who stream like Disney every day, Disney parks, right, in California and Florida, and I don't see it busy. The only time I see it where it's dead is like when they have early access in the morning. But
Right.
I mean, like that's early access before the actual, general consumers come into the actual parks. But it's not empty. I see it now. It's not empty. I know every year I hear it since 2022, since Bob Chapek got in trouble in Florida politically. This narrative that Disney parks are empty. No, some sectors might be down, but most overall, on average, they've been up.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been all this doom and gloom. I mean, it's just constantly on social media about how these parks are just limping along, I mean, look, you have Disney California Adventure, which is the secondary park at Disneyland Resort, okay? And it's at 10, it's up 11%, but it's neck and neck with Universal's, arguably Universal's best park, Islands of Adventure. It is literally tied with Islands of Adventure. Now, look, that's significant. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about this secondary park in Anaheim, which, look, DCA is a fun park. I'm an advocate for DCA, but it's not exactly, the most spectacular theme park in Disney's roster of parks globally. And it is head to head, neck and neck with Universal's arguably best park. And so when I hear this stuff about, Disney is really just, taking a beating here with the brand and everyone's going to Universal now. It's like, look, you can like Universal. There's nothing wrong with that. I like Universal. But the narratives online are just, you see the numbers there. It doesn't line up. It just line up. I mean, even Universal Studios Hollywood, which actually had a really good 2023, mostly due to Super Mario, Super Nintendo World, it had a 15% increase, right? Which is interesting, though. Even with Nintendo, though, and 15% is a good increase, but even with Nintendo, it's kind of like not too far off from what SeaWorld did this in 2020. With 13%. So it's like, even with Nintendo, the powerhouse IP, it wasn't even really doing that much better than SeaWorld San Diego, which did have a new attraction, I believe at Arctic Blast or something like that. But that attraction didn't even open, I think, until the summer of 2023 when Super Nintendo World opened at the beginning, like January, February. So it's not even like really pulling ahead of like SeaWorld in terms of percentages. What's that you, Seymour?
Yeah, and also I want to state that this is North American numbers as well. Mm-hmm. Scott also has one for worldwide numbers over there, right, on the. So yeah, but for North American numbers, these are pretty good. And I'm surprised, like even smaller parks actually doing pretty good. Like Hershey Park still up 3%. No, not this year. Actually, last year, just like the end of last year, I realized there was a park called Hershey Park in Hershey.
Yeah,
I didn't know there was a park. Wonderland, I know, and the minus 14%, I can see why nobody cares about Wonderland anymore in Canada.
Yeah, you're a Canadian. You're a Canadian, so I'm not familiar with Wonderland, so it's kind of an irrelevant kind of park. No one really.
Yeah, no, we go to Cedar Point. Like the Canadians, we're just like, oh no, we're going into the States and we're going to Cedar Point. You can see Cedar Point up 17%. No, we go to Cedar Point. We don't care about Wonderland. Even if you live near Wonderland, we don't care. We go to Cedar Point. It's a thing. Canadians do that. There's like a boat that you can actually take from Pelee Island to Sandusky to go straight there. Nice. It's fun. Been there once to take the boat. I had friends who lived there, who had a cottage at Pelee Island, and you can go straight to the U.S. right there. But yeah, we don't like Wonderland. Canada. And it was it's owned now by Cedar Fair after.
Gotcha. Now this is interesting thing that I want to bring up to you, Seymour. I'm really curious. I want to kind of pick your brain on this because we're hearing that like Epic Universe is going to change everything, right? So Epic Universe is going to open in 2025. And that's when Universal is really going to be on the map now, right? It's just that this park is going to change everything. Here's the issue, though, and this is an issue for Universal. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, but we're going to talk about it here. Islands of Adventure is down 9% in 2023. Okay. Now, if we take everyone's theory, fans have a theory that people are going to hold back on their vacation in anticipation of Epic Universe. Now, chances are they weren't holding back in 2023. That's a little early, I think. But let's just say, okay, for conversation's sake, let's just say that does actually pan out for 2024. And people are holding back in 2024. So you're taking a loss in 2023 of 9% for IOA. Presumably, you'll probably take a loss again in 2024 if the theory is correct and people are holding back on their vacations. Now, when Epic Universe does open in the summer of 2025, Universal's already so much in the hole. Does it even move the needle, or is it basically just getting back to where you started? Are you basically just like, it's like a bank account? You're overdrawn. If you're overdrawn $900 and you make $1,000, well, you know what I'm saying? You're just basically just making up the loss. I mean, what do you say about that? It's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, they dug this. If it's true that they're holding off, which I don't believe, because you would see it throughout all their parks. If we're able to look at that little post that Scott did over there, actually, about the 5 worldwide.
Oh yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So if you look at this, you see like Universal Studios Japan. Look at it. Who's not going there, right? If people are holding off to go to Epic Universe, why are they going to Universal Japan then? Look at that. The attendance, right? 16,000. That's like Magic Kingdom numbers. Like, it's close up there. It's the third one, 29 up 29%. If people around the world are not going to Epic Universe and waiting, then who's going to Universal Studios Japan? I believe more likely it's because in the States, in the US, in Florida specifically, interest rates are so high now, people rather go to other areas around the world that are cheaper, especially Japan, where the yen has fallen off. I think if Epic Universe comes back, the people they said they were, waiting off has already gone to the parks. You can see that right here with Tokyo Disneyland, Universal Studios Japan, Shanghai Disneyland. Like, you see these parks, even Tokyo Disney Sea, right? A lot of these, they've already gone. They're willing, people, especially for me, right? It's much cheaper to go to Japan at a quarter of the cost than go to Florida. The exchange rate is, they haven't done a rate cut in a while for the US. And because of that, my Canadian currency values less when I convert it to USD. But then if I convert it to yen, I get much more back because my currency is much more, worth more than the USD. So I don't believe it. And the notion that people are waiting, because you can see the numbers that every other park around the world is doing better.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too, and we talked about it on the channel. I brought it up in a video just like a couple of months ago. Universal is putting literally everything into Epic Universe, and at the expense of the 2 existing parks they have now, Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure. And the numbers are showing those 2 parks took a hit. And it's not, I agree with you, Seymour. It's not because people are holding back and waiting for Epic Universe. 2023, first of all, is way too soon for that anyway, okay? We're talking 2 years out of Epic Universe. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that Universal took all of their resources and poured it into Epic Universe, and that's the only focus, and has really neglected the other 2, and you're starting to see the damage, basically, the battle damage of that decision. If they were to invest in, say, Islands of Adventure or the Universal Studio Park, I think those losses would have been far less. Now, look, I understand people are going to tell me, well, what about the Minions area they just built and the DreamWorks thing? And I understand all that. I'm talking about like serious investments. You know what I'm saying? We haven't had a serious investment at the Universal Resort really since like Diagon Alley, which is 2014. That's a decade out now. And that's why you're seeing this. That's why you're seeing this neglect. And this is the thing. And we've been saying it on this channel for years. This is a huge problem for Universal when Epic Universe opens and it's the shiny new thing, and these other 2 Universal parks, which are already struggling in 2023, by the way, what's going to happen when the shiny new thing opens down the street with the cannibalization? Nobody's going to give a shit about these other two parks. No one cares about them now. They're down 9%. What's going to happen when the park open?
That's exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, these people are not caring about the parks now, so they're going to all the other parks. So it's like, how could you give this notion that, oh, they're waiting for Epic Universe if they're not waiting to go to a different park?
Exactly. And that's why Universal, we heard this, they sent out that information, like travel agencies and like third parties, where you can't just do like a single day at Epic Universe, right? Because they're worried about the cannibalization. So what they're doing is they're like forcing people into these 3-day tickets where like Epic Universe is like included, but you have to go to the other two parks. I was told for literally years that I was crazy, that, there's not the cannibalization is OG, don't worry about it. People are just going to add a day to their Universal vacation, no problem. You know what I'm saying? It seems like Universal is worried about it. It seems like Universal, maybe they watch OG55. maybe they see what's going on here, because it was obvious to me even years ago that this was going to happen. And it's even worse now because they haven't really invested in the other two parks. So it's fascinating. But in terms of brand withdrawal or this brand pullback that you're in, any kind of before we move on to our next topic, in terms of theme parks, the brand withdrawal, what are your kind of overall?
No, it doesn't exist. It's a false narrative. Like I said, if you go on YouTube, you could just go to the videos, you see them live, and you see them busy. I don't understand. Like, anyone can go on Google and right, go to YouTube and see a live streamer, right?
Yeah,
it's always busy. Even now, I see lots of pictures of you guys, right? Or the OG55 crew going, and I see it's packed. There's a lot of people there, and on a Monday too, lots of people were packed. I saw. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought it was gonna be not busy, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and people will tell you, well, it was only busy on Monday because this particular Magic Key opened up, or it's only busy on this day because of this reason and that reason. And I understand that, and there's a lot of truth to that. I'm not saying that's wrong, but if you're going to say that the company has a brand problem, it doesn't really matter what the circumstances. It doesn't matter what keys are available that day or not, because if people were really tired of Disney, whether that day was available for your Magic Key or not, it would still be dead, because there's brand damage. There's a brand problem. People don't want to go to Disney. So just because your Magic Key is open that day doesn't obligate you to go that day. So yes, I understand, like the Inspire Key was opened up, or this, that, and the other, and that's true. I'm not arguing with that, but people are still inclined to go. So that, to me, that's an indicator that people still very much care about these places and still really want to go and still have a good time. You know what I'm saying? So it's a fascinating thing. I think the parks are going to be fine. Now, Bob Iger did say, I believe in that last quarterly earnings call, that going forward now, we're going to, for the next few quarters, we're going to see a little bit of a pullback, right? If I'm not mistaken, Seymour?
Yeah, Hugh Johnson was saying that. Yes.
Hugh Johnston, sorry.
Yeah, he was saying that. And great guy, Hugh Johnson, man. I'm a huge fan. Ever since he joined the company, the guy, he's like the Tim Cook of Pepsi when he was at Pepsi, and now he's at Disney. And I'm like, yes, that's what Disney needed, and they got him. And yeah, Hugh Johnson was saying, even on CNBC, that the parks are going to soften, but that's what you do as a CFO. That's what you do. What you tell your shareholders, that don't expect the unexpected, because we're going to tell you that it could be a possibility of that being softened, because they don't know the future or what's going to happen. They don't know if the Fed's going to do a rate cut. They don't know if we're already in a recession, right? So like, if all these things happen, like maybe they do a rate cut, and when they do a rate cut, people want to take their money out of their savings account and willing to go on vacation now, because interest rates are so high that people didn't want to spend money. They just wanted to save money.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, brother.
So yeah, I was just saying that they want to give transparency, and which is what I really like, is because if a company gives you transparency, you're not going to expect the unexpected. And that's why I actually invested in Disney now, because I've seen that the management that's coming out, that they brought in, it showing off their skill set, especially like I just said, I'm a huge fan of Hugh Johnson. It's the reason why you should be like bullish on the company if you're owning stocks. And transparency is key, because people don't like uncertainty. especially with CEO, even with certain sectors of the company, you want to know what's going on and not be under the radar with those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm glad you brought up the CEO. We're gonna talk about that, and then we're gonna talk about the stock and the overall health of the company. I wanted to bring this to your. This is actually like breaking news, like just from a few hours ago. But I want to kind of pick your brain on this, Seymour. So this is from Variety. It says here, Disney board committee to find Bob Iger's CEO successor will be led by Morgan Stanley's James Gorman. This is interesting because I could have sworn the Nike guy was doing this job, but I could be wrong on that. But I could have sworn that this was his job to kind of lead the succession committee or whatever. But this guy, James, here it is. It says here that Gorman, who joined the Disney board earlier this year, oversaw the recent succession process at Morgan Stanley, where he had previously served as the firm's CEO. As per the committee's March 2024 letter to shareholders, the committee and the board are reviewing internal candidates and external candidates. So overall, what are your thoughts on this pick and the fact that they're looking at internal and external? I know legally, I think they probably have to say external, but
I really want someone externally this time, but that's wishful thinking. I think they're gonna do someone internally, but Morgan, like this guy was the ex-CEO of Morgan Stanley, right? He was there when he would pick his CEO as well for his replacement. And he's a smart guy, and he's on the board, and like this is perfect. I'll be honest, the Nike guy, I can't even remember his name. That's he was also leading it for Bob Chapek, and that didn't go well. You needed someone new, someone fresh to lead the charge, and I can see get someone from Morgan Stanley to lead the charge. It's great because you don't want another Starbucks fiasco, because that's what it's starting to look like. You don't want another Bob Chapek 2.0, and then after that, you have to fire the CEO and bring Bob Iger back or someone else. Starbucks, they just fired their third CEO now, but this time they didn't bring back their old CEO. They actually brought a CEO from Chipotle. They paid them like $80 million to come because they know they need someone worthy to run the company or it's going to fail. And I feel like this is what's happening here too. You need to ensure that you get someone worthy. You can't make a mistake this time.
Right. No, you can't. Look, it was bad enough the first time, when Bob Iger kind of threw the keys to Chapek, hey, you deal with it right before the pandemic. And I made many videos criticizing Bob Iger for doing this. You know what I'm saying? That was not a good call on Iger's part. I think he was definitely trying to save his own legacy and image and kind of throwing Chapek out there to the wolves, basically. Right now, Chapek managed to mess it up even more. I think he did bungle a lot of stuff on his own too. So it wasn't all Iger's fault. But here's the thing. Okay, so Iger comes back. You can't do the same thing again. Like if he picks somebody and that person's a disaster, you can't do the same playbook and fire this person and have Iger come back. Iger has to get this right. He has to get this right. And here's the thing. I got to be real honest. And I like Bob. I do. I like Bob Iger, but I think one weakness for Bob Iger, he's not like the best at choosing talent. Even with the studio stuff, picking the heads of the studios and things like that, he's got an issue. He's real hit and miss with this stuff. We saw Chapek, and there's issues there. You know what I'm saying? He passed over Tom Staggs, which I thought Tom Staggs was fantastic. So he doesn't have the greatest track record when it comes to this. Now, I'm glad there's a committee and there's other people involved in this process. That's very much, and this James Gorman guy, fantastic. But we'll see. I mean, I really hope they are looking at external candidates too. I would love to have I don't know, Tom Staggs, which I know he's technically working with the company now, but.
Yeah, that's why I was hopeful. I'm maybe that's why they're bringing in a Wall Street guy to lead the charge, because maybe they were going to buy out the company that Tom Staggs and Kevin Meyer does, so they could become co-CEOs. But it's just me wishful thinking. And I think if they were the co-CEOs in the first place, the company wouldn't be in the position they are now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The co-CEO thing is the way to go. That's the play right there. You get someone in there like Tom Staggs, Kevin Meyer, or you can even do a Kevin Meyer, Dana Walden duo or something, but I think that's the way you go. Now, I will say this. We were at the D23 Expo a couple of weeks ago, and, look, I've been very critical of Josh Dumaro. I have. Hasn't done the greatest job with the Parks division, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? A lot of fans like him. Just me personally, I think he's been really weak. He delivered at that expo. I know a lot of fans are upset right now because of the Rivers of America and all that. I understand that, but he did everything he was supposed to do at that expo. Fans were complaining about the blue sky. He did no blue sky. It was all confirmed, greenlit, concrete things. He gave dates. He gave timelines. He said this is going to all be done by the end of the 5th year and things like that. Like, he did everything he needed to do. Now, do I think that Josh is going to be the next CEO? No, I don't. I still don't think he's going to get it, but I think the expo made it a little more competitive. But what do you think about that? I mean, I know you weren't at the expo, Seymour, but you were kind of watching from social media and stuff. So
kind of wish I was there. I was there, actually. I was kind of jealous. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh my God, this is bigger than I thought, because I saw D23 when Bob Chapek did it, and it didn't look good. People were booing him. It was bad. But now when I see Bob Iger doing it, full in charge, they're actually investing in D23 and actually give a better experience. I'm like, okay, this is not what I was thinking it was going to be. It was like, it felt more like Comic-Con, and I liked it, but for Disney fans. And, it made me think like, okay, maybe I go in the next 2 years. I love Comic-Con. Toronto here, there's a Comic-Con version. I think it's like the second and the third biggest. It's called Fan Expo, but yeah, that experience, I like it. Dress up as your favorite Disney character and go. Yeah. But with that being said, I don't think he's going to be CEO.
I don't either.
Either at best co-CEO.
Yes, I'd be more supportive of something like that. And it's nothing against Josh necessarily as a person or anything. I think he's a great guy. He seems really pleasant, all that good stuff. I think he did a great job. And I think he did, like I said, he did everything he had to do at the expo, and maybe even kind of like exceeded, even because there was a lot of announcements at that expo. But I've said it all along. I think Disney needs to be run by studio people. It's a studio first. I know a lot of park fans push back on that, and I understand. The theme parks are a big division of the Walt Disney Company, but the studio really is the heart and the soul of the whole operation. That whole flywheel literally depends on the studio. If the studio isn't making, successful IP, the parks have nothing to do. Like, all these attractions and all these shows and everything in the parks are based on the IP that the studio makes. The studio is like the center of it all. And if the studio isn't operating on all cylinders and doing really, really well, everything suffers. Everything kind of falls off, And the thing with Josh that worries me, and I could be wrong, but for me, I feel like Hollywood and the studio side of things is going through a real seismic shift right now. A lot of change in that whole part of the company and just in Hollywood in general. I'm not confident Josh can get in there and really maneuver and kind of navigate those waters. I have much more confidence in like a Dana Walden, a Kevin Meyer. I don't know. And I could be wrong. He might be the next CEO. He might knock it out of the park. You never know. From where I stand, I think a studio person, I think you need one right now more than ever because of Hollywood, the Hollywood shifting landscape. What say you, Seymour?
Yeah, and also a wild speculation. I wouldn't be opposed for like a 3-part CEO. It's rarely done, but companies who do it are like, they've done it very successful. I can see it happening where you have Hugh Johnson is the financial guy, and then you have Dana Walden doing the media, and then you have Josh D'Amaro to do the parks, and then you all three connect together and work as one for the company. Though there might be some back and forth fighting on it, but I don't mind that. That's a wild take, though. I don't think it's ever going to happen, but I don't mind if that happens, because then you have all three people who's good at their sectors and can boost it up, especially the financials of Disney right now. That it's very important for their financials to go back up.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. You're the segue king, Seymour. You're the segue king because we're going to talk about the financials because there's again this narrative out there, where it's like Disney is a broken company or Disney is really just bruised and battered and it's oh my gosh, this company is really in bad shape. And it's funny, Seymour, because I look at all these um, all these news stories and all this stuff coming out of these other studios, whether it be Paramount, whether it be Warner Brothers, and it's like those studios are doing far, far worse. And it's just like I don't understand this narrative that Disney is doing so bad. Disney, look, has problems, but when you zoom out and you look at the overall Hollywood landscape, they're actually doing better than most of their rivals. You know what I'm saying? What say you, sir?
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, like you said, zoom out, because if you just cherry pick a data and say, look, Disney is doing bad because their Disney Plus is not profitable, yet you forgot about every other sector of the company. Cruises are doing amazing. Parks are doing amazing, right? Linear is still making money. Sports is now going up and up, but yet you only want to focus on Disney Plus and compare that with Netflix. It makes me think like, no, Disney Plus is not a streaming company. It's an entertainment company that has a flywheel of all sorts of businesses.
Yeah, and we've talked about that before on previous videos. If you want to elaborate on that, the comparison, right, of like Netflix and Disney, and it's kind of like how it's kind of this unfair. You want to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. About that. Yeah, they always say we should compare Disney Plus with Netflix, but then you forget about Hulu, and then you forget about ESPN, and then you're trying to make it a one-to-one comparison, even though Netflix is a streaming company and Disney Plus, Disney with Disney Plus is not a streaming company. It's an entertainment company. So it's not a one-to-one comparison. You can compare their streaming services, sure. But to say that it's a one-to-one comparison and that Disney is not doing as much subscribers as Netflix, it doesn't need to. Disney Plus, like their direct-to-consumer, it's only like the revenue is only a quarter of the overall company. Netflix is 100%. So I'm not understanding why we always compare one to one and not give any context to it. Actually,
Yeah, you got to give that context. You got there because it's like with the stock too. It's like you can look and we've talked about it where it's like if you just focus on the day to day. Well, Disney's down today. Okay, that's great, but is the whole market down? Because that makes all the difference in the world, right? If the whole market is down, it's not really a Disney issue. Now, if the market's up, but Disney's down, 5%, okay, that's a different conversation. You know what I'm saying? But that's why it's important to look at the broader picture, because when you don't, you're not really getting the accurate. You're not really getting the reality on the ground, basically. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, especially when Disney Plus and Hulu in the States, if we take out YouTube, it's the second largest streaming services. And then if you compare outside the US, they're like number two as well. They don't have as much competition. There's no Peacock. Paramount Plus is limited in other areas. Same thing with HBO. Sorry, Max now, just Max. That was a bad name to change. But yet Max, they're on limited areas too, right? With Disney Plus, they have merged Hulu in there internationally. In Canada, I don't even have Hulu. It's all there in Disney Plus. I pay one service. I barely even use my Netflix anymore because all the content I want to watch, especially the general entertainment one coming from the Fox side, I love those ones. I keep watching it, like especially It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, The Bears. I'm trying to finish, and then I have to watch the new Shogun. There's so many things with the Hulu content, but people just want to say, "Oh, look at the U.S. Look at one portion," but yet they don't look the greater picture, the overall.
Well, yeah, and that's why I want to bring up one of your tweets here. We're kind of jumping around a little bit, but well, this pertains to what we're talking about. But you said here in his tweet thread, they say Disney's value has been destroyed in the last 5 years. Book value per share tells a different story, and Grifter's going to grift, but the numbers don't lie, right? Book value per share, theoretically, it is what investors would get if they sold all company assets and paid all of its debts and obligations. If you want to elaborate on that in layman's terms, Mr. Duck, in regards to what you're saying here.
Oh, simply, I hear a lot of people on X saying that because the stock price is at its 5-year low, Disney has destroyed its value, like fundamentally with the numbers. And that's simply not true. Because if you look at the actual value of the company, if Disney were to, let's say, close up shop right now, right? This is how much people will get per share. And you can see the value has been increasing since 2017. And the only time it's ever gone down was COVID. Where's the brand damage? I don't understand, right? The value of the actual company has gone up and up and up. If they were going broke, the value should have gone down. A lot of people just want to focus on stock price. Stock price doesn't tell you much. It tells you the short-term sentiment. In the long run, it tells you, the actual company, but in the short term, it doesn't really tell you much. If you have to look beyond the stock price to understand the actual assets of the company. Like this tells you, they pay off all their debt, and if they were to close up shop, this is how much you get. Where's the down?
Yeah, no, exactly. Where's the damage? Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where we talk about it a lot on the channel, where there's a disconnect between the fan bubble, so to speak, and like the reality of the situation, or like the normies and what have you. And it's like, if you spend all your time on X or even on YouTube or various social media platforms, you would walk away with the impression that Disney is a wounded animal and it's on the verge of collapse. But then you see these numbers, and it paints a completely different picture. I mean, we just talked about the theme park stuff. For 2 years now, we've been hearing about how the theme parks people are so sick of Disney parks because of Lightning Lane and Genie Plus, and they hate this and they hate that, and everyone's going to Universal now. That all the goodwill has been drained from the Walt Disney Company, and we're all going to Universal now. And it's like, then the numbers come out, and it's like totally opposite. Universal took more of a hit with their theme parks in 2023 than Disney did. I mean, in all truth and honesty, that's exactly what happened. But you wouldn't know that based on the narratives being kind of crafted on social media. It's not just one outlet or this, that, and the other. It's out there. Like, it's a lot of outlets, even some mainstream media stuff is kind of pushing this crap. You know what I'm saying? So,
and I just wanted to give context too, because I don't want to, with that photo, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and there you go.
Yeah, with this photo. So like in 2019, you can see the value went up. Yes, because they bought Fox. And then the value went down because, yes, COVID. But, a few people were telling me on X saying, it went up because of Fox. Yes. But if there was actual brand damage of people boycotting Disney Plus, people not going seeing their movies, not going to the parks, their value would have stayed down from COVID. But that's not true. It's been only going up, especially now, right? Right now, it's at $55.40. Not one time has it gone down. Not one time, even after owning Fox. And you add that debt in, and that creates significant depreciation in the price, which you can see during COVID, right? But then even then, they still gone back up because they've been paying down their debt, right? They've been increasing shareholder value. They've been getting more money, more assets. And one thing I like to note is that people tell me, they lost so much money on Disney Plus. Well, what they forget to tell you is that they invested in Disney Plus. The content on Disney Plus is still on Disney. Most of it is on Disney Plus. Or if it's not on Disney Plus, they're licensing it to Netflix. Let's say Lost and Prison Break. One of the older ones, right? I have a friend on YouTube who's like, I'm watching Prison Break. And I'm like, yeah, that's owned by Disney. And he didn't realize that. He's like, okay, because he's not the greatest. He doesn't like Disney. He thinks Netflix is better. But then he's watching a Disney-owned show on Netflix, and I found it ironic. But a lot of people say, they lost money. No, they didn't. They owned those content that has increased the value of the company. So the Hulu shows, the Disney Plus shows, the ones that do well, they increase that value in the company. And a lot of people forget about that. Even movies, right? When you have a movie that comes out in the movie theater and then goes on Disney Plus, you have just increased your value within the company just from that content being made. You can sell it on, it's not even just streaming. You can sell it on digital. You can have TV rights if you're, let's say, on linear, and then broadcasters, will pay you to license it to that channel. There's so much money that you can make out of it, and that increases the value of the company.
Exactly. You're investing in it. You're investing in it. And that's why there is this narrative out there too, where it's like all this money being poured into the studio is a waste of money. Now, look, I think that Disney should get their budgets down. Obviously, I think the budgets for a lot of this stuff are way out of control and bloated. You know what I'm saying? So there's some truth to that for sure. But this notion of like Disney spending Disney shouldn't be pouring so many resources into the studio, I think that's nonsense. I mean, it's vital they do that because, like you said, it builds value. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and Disney's a studio first, and you need to make sure that studio is healthy because then everything else is healthy. It feeds the theme parks, it feeds the merchandise, it feeds literally everything. It's not a waste. It's like you were saying, Seymour. It's an investment into the company's future and the value of the brand in general. You know what I'm saying?
And the most ironic thing I find funny is that the same people who say that Disney's brand has been damaged, the value has gone down, they've been saying that, oh, you're going to have to pay more for Hulu because the value went up.
There you go. Well, and that's the thing too. Okay, well, let's talk about this because in terms of like even these individual brands, so to speak, right? We see a lot about it right now with Acolyte. Okay, I honestly had no interest in watching The Acolyte. It didn't look good to me. I didn't watch. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I didn't watch a single minute of The Acolyte. You know what I'm saying? So it just didn't look good to me. But here's the thing: it wasn't renewed. It had one season, and it wasn't renewed for a season 2, right? So a lot of people are kind of jumping on this bandwagon of like Star Wars is dead. Star Wars is dead. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, just like they were saying Pixar was dead until Inside Out 2 came out and made $1.5 billion, I think it is now, or something crazy at the box office. You know, and Star Wars was dead before Mandalorian. I remember hearing all the Star Wars is dead because of the sequel trilogy nonsense, right? And once the Mandalorian came out, it was a global sensation all over again. These brands are very strong. At their core, these Disney brands, the Star Wars, the Pixars, the Disney animations are very strong. People just want the right content, though. So people aren't like just going to blindly support a movie like Wish or, you know, a movie like whatever it is, or a show like Acolyte or whatever it is. They're not going to blindly support this stuff, but they like the brand. They like these franchises, but the right product has to come along to get people to go see it. Okay, so it's not a brand issue because if it was a brand issue, people wouldn't have been so quick to buy their Inside Out 2 tickets. If it was a brand issue with Marvel, people wouldn't have been so quick to buy Deadpool and Wolverine tickets.
Yeah, the number one rated R movie in the world. Right.
You don't go from brand damage in the hole, oh my God, this company, everyone doesn't like Marvel anymore, terrible, to being the biggest the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. You don't go from Pixar taking a massive beating in their brand image and no one cares about the Pixar brand anymore to then like next year making $1.5 billion at the box office and it's like the biggest animated film of all time. You don't do that when there's actual issues with the brand itself. It's clear that the individual projects might lack enthusiasm, and that's a fair argument to make. You know what I'm saying? I'm a huge Disney fan. I'm a huge animation fan. I still haven't seen Wish. If I'm not motivated to see it, I can see why the normies aren't. You know what I'm saying? But that's not because people dislike Disney. You know what I'm saying? It's not because Bob Iger is so progressive. It's just because people didn't want to see Wish. People didn't care so much, I guess, about The Acolyte. That's where it starts and stops. But I guarantee you, if Disney drops another Star Wars thing, or whether it be a movie or a show, that catches fire and people have interest in it, they will go to it. It will do numbers just like the Pixar movie did and just like Deadpool Wolverine did. You know? So go ahead. I do apologize, brother.
No, I just wanted to put an emphasis on that Disney consumers have now more money to spend throughout the company compared to before 2020. November 2019 when they launched Disney Plus, and before the Hulu stuff. The only way to watch Disney stuff is either Netflix by licensed content. You go to the movies, right? And most of the time you go to the movies. But now we're spreading our money out to where you have streaming services, theme parks, linear sports. You have so much more on it, and so even if the parks are softening a little bit or the movie theaters are softening a little bit, Disney, even if you look at the revenue that's coming in at the company, it's being spread out more, and they're spending more money per person compared to previously. And to say that that's brand damage is ridiculous because you're spending more now.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And another thing I want to touch upon, I actually forgot to touch upon it in the theme park segment, earlier on in the show. Look, I've made no bones about it. You can, if you want, you can go back and check out videos that we did on Epic Universe. Dark Universe, the Universal Monsters area for Epic Universe, looks absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely incredible. You know what I'm saying? Here's the thing, though, with that. And I'm looking forward to it. That's really the one thing that's kind of driving me, that. And I do want to check out the Donkey Kong stuff. But here's the issue that I think Universal, or the challenge Universal has when it comes to that. Disney at D23 announced Villains Land. And Villains Land looks like similar to Dark Universe. That dark, twisted, a lot of crazy rock work and the spooky trees, the whole thing. It looks very similar to that of Dark Universe. But here's the issue. The Disney Villains as a franchise is way stronger than the Universal Monsters. Now, here's the thing. I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments, and they're going to tell me, no, OG, you're crazy. Everyone knows who Frankenstein is. You're right. Everyone knows. It's recognizable, but recognizable doesn't necessarily equal viable or a merch mover. Like, you know what I'm saying? How many people are really going and buying Frankenstein merchandise or the Wolfman merchandise, right? But the Disney Villains, I mean, it's basically keeping Hot Topic afloat. You know what I'm saying? That's $1 billion franchise there. So that's a huge concern, I think, for Epic Universe, in that you have now Disney, who is building their version of Dark Universe, but with a much stronger IP. That's a problem, and no one really wants to talk about that, but it is true. The Disney Villains are a major franchise, just like the Disney Princesses. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that.
I was just looking at the box office numbers for the Mummy. 410 million it made. I don't know if you consider that a flop when the budget was around like 200 million. So a lot of people didn't want to see that movie. I mean, if you thought the Mummy was a good brand, you would have seen it, right?
I've made that argument before too, Seymour, and yes, Universal has not had the most success lately in regard to these Universal monsters, and that's an issue for them. The land looks really cool, and here's the thing: theme park lands, to be fair, can exist outside of the franchises. You don't have to be a fan of Cars necessarily to like Cars Land, and I understand that. But it can also, look, I think that when you have movies like you were saying, Seymour, like The Mummy with Tom Cruise and stuff like that, and people aren't going to it, it could be a red flag that maybe the general audiences, the normies, aren't necessarily interested in that franchise. So that could be a problem, So that's a great point.
They were strong when in the past, like the original Mummy with Brendan Fraser, but I don't know if the IPs are that strong now. I believe that they've been forgotten for a long time, and now they're trying to jump back up, restart the IPs, and I don't think it's as popular as people think they are. The villains, even in D23 during the Fortnite, they announced that they're going to bring Disney villains to Fortnite. That's how popular they are, because and I saw like praises in the Fortnite community about that, and even they bringing in the Incredibles as well, but praises for that because people want to be villains from Disney.
The villains are huge, and I understand. I'm not under the illusion of like when we were at D23, we were at the Honda Center, and it was like this rock concert kind of atmosphere. And I understand. Like, I totally get it. Like, the energy does add to the whole thing, right? It adds to the announcement. Like, my feeling on it, sitting in the Honda Center, is going to probably be a little different than someone who is just reading the news on Twitter. And I totally understand that. I'm aware of that. But I'm telling you, I mean, when they announced the Villains Land, I mean, they blew the roof off that place. I mean, it was out of control. People were so excited. This is going to be now. Look, they have to deliver. They have to follow through and make a quality thing. They're not off the hook. You gotta go beyond just the announcement. You know what I'm saying? You got to make the land look as dope as the concept art. So there's still challenges ahead. It's not over yet. But I'm telling you, if they can make it look anything like they're promising on the concept art, this thing is going to be a massive home run for Disney. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of fans, in the theme park community, they're like, I get it. I understand it. They're concerned. You know, look what happened to the Communicore Hall over at Epcot, and a lot of the Epcot stuff was really whittled down, and it didn't turn out like what was promised, right? I understand that argument. I'm not poo-pooing that at all, but it is a different situation. I mean, for a lot of reasons. Number one, that was right in the middle of the pandemic, right? When all that shit hit the fan basically around that same time, when the company basically was nearly the entire company except for Disney Plus was shut down. But even aside from the pandemic, you have a completely different management team back then with Bob Chapek. Even in Imagineering, we had Barbara Boza, who's now gone. Since then, you've had like Bruce Vaughn, veteran Imagineer, coming back. You've had Joe Rohde come back as a consultant. The situation is different now than it was back then, just even a few years ago. So I understand fans' concerns. I respect that, but it's not apples to apples necessarily. It's a little different ballgame. And you got to remember, too, Bob Iger has done this before. Iger 1.0, as our friend Hedge calls him, right? Iger 1.0 delivered on this park stuff when it came to Cars Land, Buena Vista Street, Pandora. I mean, as CEO, he was able to manage the budgets and the creativity pretty well. I don't know why that would be any different now. You know what I'm saying? But what say you, Seymour?
Yeah, especially when you have better management now. You have like people better, like even for board of directors, and Hugh Johnson being the CFO. You have people in here, even activist investors like Value Act, who's going to be on Disney's ass to ensure that they're innovating within the parks. That was like one of their white pages. They were talking about how they're leaning in more into the parks, and they want to innovate in the parks. They want to innovate within their streaming services and ensure that it grows, and it's not just staggered of growth. For that to happen, they're gonna have to make like Villains Land. So
yeah. So we'll see. It's a fascinating time. Go ahead.
And I trust Value Act. They're the ones who push Nintendo to do theme parks at Universal Studios, and look how great that is.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the Nintendo stuff for Universal has been a home run for them. I mean, arguably that's why. Look, if it wasn't for Nintendo, Universal's theme park numbers would have looked really bad domestically, at least. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and maybe even in Japan, because the Nintendo stuff is huge out there too. But if they didn't have Nintendo, my gosh, what would have happened? You know what I'm saying? We saw 9% drops over there at the other parks, and if Hollywood got a boost because of that. Here's the other thing too. I keep hearing that when Epic Universe comes online, it's gonna put drive a stake through the Disney company's heart, basically, right? And it's gonna like kneecap Disney. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you opened up a little slice of Epic Universe already here in California. I mean, we got Super Nintendo World, minus Donkey Kong, to be fair, but we got a slice of Epic Universe here, and it didn't destroy Disneyland Resort. Disneyland Resort, as you can see from the numbers, is thriving. So why would there be any other different outcome over there in Florida? I don't understand.
Especially when even in Japan, they're getting Donkey Kong as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, okay, so all the the people on the other side of the world, right, in the Asian countries, why would they want to go? Because usually Universal in Florida is the main park that you would want to go to for attractions. It's like their biggest park. But now you're seeing a lot of their overseas park having a similar attraction. And then it's like, okay, and then they're going to do one in the UK. What's even the point to go to Epic Universe anymore?
No, that's a fair point. Yeah,
they're almost diluting their own brand with other theme parks.
Well, I've been saying, and we had a show, like I would say now 6 months ago, we talked about that, the kind of the expansion, the fast expansion of Universal's parks, which is not, look, and we talked about it. It's out of necessity, everybody. It's because their main core business, the broadband and all linear stuff, is really not doing well. So they are trying to offset the one division sort of cratering and trying to make the theme park thing sort of offset the thing that's cratering. So, but you're right though, you grow too fast, you got problems. We've even seen that with Star Wars and Marvel in a lot of ways, right? On a smaller scale, where it's like Marvel, it was too much too fast, basically, and you kind of you lose the quality along the way sometimes when you rush things and you sort of just want to churn content out. And you can do the same thing with parks, except the parks, it's a higher stakes gamble with the parks though. It's a riskier endeavor doing it at the parks. I mean, those are physical places, and we saw the damage that Euro Disney, and now it's called Disneyland Paris, but what damage that did Disney at the time when that park didn't do well. So it's a huge risk for Universal. This expansion is exciting for fans. I get it, and we should be excited, but it's also a huge risk because if any one of these properties fails, that's not good. You know what I'm saying? So we'll see. We will absolutely see. Go ahead, brother.
But I agree with what you're saying about the dilution with Marvel and Star Wars, how they gone too fast. It's harder to fix when it's a park. It's easier when it's just a digital film, and you could just okay, let's cancel that. Let's start from the beginning. Let's focus on ensuring that the budget is right and all this, and fix our mistakes. It's much harder to do that with a park.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Go ahead, and especially a lot of the issues that Disney had with the movies. There was a strike, and then there was COVID. So a lot of this stuff, unfortunately, couldn't be helped. A lot of the other studios got hurt too, and you can see that with the quality of the movies. Black Adam, Flash, Shazam 2, but nobody wants to talk about that. But yeah, the quality of it, it was bad. She-Hulk was bad. And, part of the accolade was during COVID too. She-Hulk was actually filmed at the same time when they did the other COVID stuff during, I think, Captain America, Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah. They were all filmed at the same time and trying to get everything so quickly. It was not good. And then, even Ryan Reynolds was talking about how budgets shouldn't, you see the accolade, the budget was big. And some people say, yeah, it's because you're trying to add more money into it to fix it. And, sometimes the reality is you should go back to the basics and create something good. And I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, no, 100%, Seymour, 100%. So we'll see how the whole thing shakes out. It's pretty fascinating stuff. It's just interesting to me. The overall, I think, theme of this video is sort of the perception versus reality is kind of the theme of it, because the perception is completely different than what's actually going on. And we see this happening over and over and over and over and over and over again. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of fascinating to kind of watch it play out, so we'll see. But any kind of closing thoughts, Seymour, before we go?
Yeah. Just a few things, just to note, people say Disney is broke, yet Disney made more money in their last quarter compared to Netflix, even though Netflix is valued more. Just a few things like that. Or how they beat the top line and the bottom line revenue. The top line and the bottom line growth in their last quarters. Yet everyone's telling me it's a bad earnings call. Don't know how. I don't know how when your net income is up 600%. Just things like this, when people just look at stock price and say it's a failure of a company, that's clickbait almost. It's almost like clickbait because they don't look beyond the numbers. And when you actually deep dive in the numbers, you're like, wait, Disney made $2.62 billion in net profit? How's that possible? Wait, what? They made more money than Netflix? Wait, what? How come Disney's only valued $162 billion company where Netflix is $300 billion? It doesn't make sense. Why am I paying less for Disney than Netflix when I get more money with Disney? Well, you should have looked at that because, most of the time it's short-term sentiment. And I can tell you that the main reason why the Disney stock has been down back to, the 5-year low, majority of it is because the uncertainty of the CEO, right? If we get another Bob Chapek 2.0, a Starbucks CEO, again, that fails, that will bring down the stock price. We don't want that. And the uncertainty for shareholders are worth more right now. They rather have that certainty. Once it's announced, right, and hopefully we get good news when it's announced, I could see the stock price go up 25%. Me and a few other shareholders were talking about it, and we're like, see, that's what's keeping it down, because the numbers, every other number is doing better. Disney Plus, the streaming services are profitable, right? And they're going to introduce a new sector with Epic Games in their partnership. Sports has been going up. The movies are doing well. And the earnings that I'm talking about with the $2.62 billion, That doesn't include Deadpool. That's only 1 week of Inside Out 2. Like, you think about it. Why are we?
Well, and now from what I'm hearing, I was out with the Italiano the past few days, but I think the Alien movie, which is now Disney, is doing pretty good too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Some people will say it's a flop because it's not making blockbuster numbers, but I'm like, if you're looking at it at profitability standpoint, when the movie's only $80 million, it's not a $200 million. It's doing phenomenal, and again, you're going to get that number in the next quarter. You're going to see that profitability, and you're going to be like, why is Disney making 3 times as much now as Netflix? And you'd be like, well, we've been telling you these numbers have been great. You just look at the stock price.
Yeah, and there's also look, and I have conservative friends. I have family members who are conservative. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not knocking anybody, but there's an element here. It's the elephant in the room. No pun intended, right? GOP, elephant in the room. But the elephant in the room is, I think there's a lot of, when it comes to narrative building and things like that, I think it's kind of this activism, this political activism, where it's like, you know, people see Bob Iger as woke or super progressive or radical left or whatever you want to call it. And it's more about taking Bob down than it is about like any like kind of like honest assessment of like what's actually happening, right? It's kind of like this thing where like, we don't like Bob, he's woke, so whatever we can do to knock him down a few pegs, you know, and that kind of attitude, I see it all the time. It's not just media, it's just everyday people on Twitter too. I see it, you know what I'm saying? And that's a huge problem, you know, and that's what's crafting a lot of this narrative is all that BS, you know, because it's not honest. It's not, you're not there. A lot of it isn't like seeing it like through like this lens of like what's actually going on. It's more about like, well, you know, Bob Iger is enemy number one because he's you know, he's a lefty. So, you know, we have to sort of like make every decision. We have to make every decision he makes and every product from coming out of the Walt Disney Company look like a failure because we don't agree with this guy's politics. Go ahead, Seymour.
He's been CEO before COVID for 20 years. Why haven't anyone attacking him then? Are you telling me you're only tagging him now? What changed? I don't understand. Like he's doing the same thing he's always done, and you can see the results, and it's showing. But for some reason now, you know, everyone's angry at him for what he's done to Disney. He's ruining the company, even though he's actually the one that pivoted the company and grown it so much within the last 20 years. Marvel, Pixar, Star Wars, and Fox. What do you think he brought all those to bring the company to new heights? That was Bob Iger. You had no issues back then. Even when Disney Star Wars came out, nobody had issues, right? You know, when the movies came out, right? With the first movie over $2 billion and the other 2 movies making over $1 billion, nobody had anything negative to say when the numbers were showing it's great. But now after COVID, you're like, oh, I hated Disney Star Wars. Well, why did everyone go see those movies then? Well, I don't understand.
And the MCU,
why didn't you say anything about Bob Iger before?
Yeah, I think it was, you know, I think the Ron DeSantis stuff, I think that added to it a lot.
But that was Bob Chapek.
But you're right. That was Bob Chapek, you know, and you can make the argument like, oh, because Iger made the tweet and the whole thing. And I understand that, but it's like, it's just this weird, like, I don't know. For me personally, I can separate like the politics from the people. Like, for example, I might not agree with a certain person or like an actor or actress in terms of their politics, but I can say I like the work they do. Apparently, a lot of people can't do that. Apparently, a lot of people will just not give Iger the win because he's woke. He can't have a win no matter what. You know what I'm saying? It's unfair.
But he's always been like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm not understanding. Even when he went on, I think Oprah, or I forget what show, and he was talking about Black Panther, and he's saying it was the right thing to do, to make this movie, and it made like a lot of money. Nobody was giving him any issues then. Sure. A lot of the things he's done before, you would give issues now, but you didn't say anything before. I don't know, something flipped after 2020, after COVID, and now you're just hating the guy that you used to love. But nobody had issues of him before.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Seymour. I don't. Yeah, you're right. I mean, what's changed? What's he doing now that was different than back then? Honestly, what's he doing now that's different than back then? You're right. He's the same IP guy that he was back then. He was,
exactly.
You know, he was always been about the IP. He's always been about the IP. This isn't new. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting. I remember even back in the day, like in like 2016, he was getting into like these arguments with like Bernie Sanders and all that stuff. He was political back then, but like you were saying, no one cared back then.
Yeah, nobody did. When the numbers show that the company is doing good and everything is fine, right? They don't say anything. But then once just the cracks shows, like, oh, one movie does bad, two movies does bad, three movies does bad. Oh, the company's falling. But then and now this narrative because what Bob Chapek did, and now they're just attacking Bob Iger.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
And I feel like it's not even going to change because I remember specifically in these videos they were anti Bob Chapek, pro Bob Iger. And then when Bob Iger came back, they were pro Bob Chapek and anti Bob Iger. They flipped it.
Yeah, well, and that's why when people say like, okay, we shouldn't have Dana Walden, you know, as like, because she's got heavy ties to like Democrats and what have you, right? We know that we talked about that here on the channel where like she was on Joe Biden's export board and she's got ties to like Kamala and all this stuff, and I understand that. But here's the thing, it's Hollywood. In my opinion, this is my opinion. It's Hollywood. Anyone you get in the Hollywood pool is going to be donating to Democrats. This is not something that's necessarily new. You know, I mean, this has been going on for decades. So is Dana Walden a Democrat? Yeah, I'm sure she is. I mean, for me, it's all the same. I mean, it's Michael Eisner is too. So it doesn't really matter to me. I'd rather just make sure we get the right person in there.
Yeah.
I understand that like conservatives might be upset that like, you know, Dana Walden gets in with her connections to Kamala and Biden. And I understand that. But if she's competent and knows what she's doing, I put her in. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to pass people over because we're worried about making like one group of people mad who likely will be mad anyway, regardless of who, like you were saying, whether it's, you know, no matter who it is, you know what I'm saying? So just put, you know, look, Dana has done a great job with her division. I think she's been far more successful than Daddy Josh running her division. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to pass her up because some people might get upset because she's like donating to Democrat. Like
they don't get upset when Apple does it. I don't know.
Tim Cook isn't a Republican. Last time I checked.
Yeah.
Far from it. I mean, he's every bit as woke as anyone at Disney. So yeah, I don't understand that, but no one really goes for Tim Cook.
Nope.
Really weird, Seymour. I really don't understand it. It's really bizarre, but I want to thank you, brother, for coming on. It's good to be back. We've been taking a little bit of a hiatus, but it is good to be back. Mr. Seymour Duck, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Mr. Seymour Duck.
There it is. Make sure you follow this man on X. Like I said, fantastic financial insight in regards to Disney, Nintendo, Japanese companies, whatever it is. Follow him, hit him on X, and you're also on Instagram too, right? But you don't really post on there.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, but yeah, I don't post as much. It doesn't do. I'm trying it, but it doesn't do well when you want to speak about financial numbers and you have to show pictures.
Yeah, I get it. I'm on Instagram too, and it just doesn't hit the same. And it's frustrating because I'm really tired of X. I'm really tired of X. You know what I'm saying? But there's not an alternative right now, like a serious alternative. It's just hard, you know? So we'll see. But everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode of OG55. The Italiano will make his return, I believe, on Friday. So look out for that. We have a lot of great content coming up. Comment down below with all your thoughts on everything we discussed today in regards to the theme park numbers, the stock, the financials, whatever you want to talk about in the comments down below. Just keep it civil. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
세상이 누구에게나 공평하게 추악해.